Many of us call ourselves Christians. We claim to be followers of Jesus. But do we really know who we are following? You see, it's very easy to follow a list of rules or to follow what we think the church expects of us. But we're called to follow a person. And that is very different altogether. Especially when that person is Jesus. His footprints have long since left the land. We can't see him anymore. So how can we follow him? Maybe we shouldn't be asking how do we follow Jesus, but who is the Jesus that we're called to follow? And what would your answer be? Is Jesus your headliner, the focus of your existence, the source of your life? Or is he someone you follow only when he's going the way that suits you?
Get me all confused. All right. So that's kind of the opening thing. So a few questions. What or whom do you follow? You can be honest.
An image.
What?
An image of Jesus.
An image of Jesus, right? Rather than actual Jesus.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Stories of Jesus also.
Stories. Are there other things that you follow in your kind of daily life? Is I think what more of this is going.
Well, if you're watching a soap opera today, you're going to be there every day to see it.
Right. My stories. I got to watch my stories. Got to follow my stories.
Sports. People follow the sports.
You can follow sports. Yeah. In fact, I think we're going to talk about that a little bit more. You follow sometimes political leaders or other leaders. Your face. We follow all sorts of different things, people, ideas, ideals. People often talk about following fashion trends, sports teams, TV shows, political figures. How do these things compare positively or negatively with the call to follow Jesus?
They don't compare at all.
They don't really compare at all in the end. Or they shouldn't, right? That's a priority issue. But are there ways that the way that we follow these other things can positively be similar to the way that we follow Jesus?
Well, if you had the same enthusiasm for him as you had for some of these other causes, some of these worldly things.
Absolutely, right? We put a lot of energy, intelligence, imagination, and love into some of these other things. Do we put that same passion into following Jesus? Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we have seasons where we're doing better than others, right? I think it's hilarious that people always talk about, I follow football religiously. How religious are you? You show up there every Monday night, but that sort of thing.
But we have a tendency to put him in the background more than
we do. Right. Because sometimes, we will focus on one thing for a little while, and that takes all of our focus. And if that thing is...
We know he's there in the background. We can call him in the morning.
Mm-hmm. It's just kind of back there. How about, is there anything else that we can learn from the way that we follow these other things about how we can follow Jesus?
In a timely manner.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you set aside a time.
Right.
The way you set aside a time to watch Blue Bloods on Friday night.
Exactly, right. That's a very good, right? And time takes time, which is sometimes a hard thing, right? We want to spend time in the Word, but we don't want to actually make the time to spend time in the Word. We just like the idea of reading our Bible. We don't actually make the time. Whereas that favorite TV show, we're going to sit down and we're going to tell everybody else to be quiet, and we're going to have our drink, and we're going to be ready to watch that show. Are there times when you are, when you have exchanged following Jesus for following a list of activities and church programs? Is that the same thing?
Depends on how you approach it.
Depends on how you approach it. Okay. Yeah. So if we're so busy doing the things of God that we don't spend any time with God, that can be a problem. But if we are busy spending time with God doing the things of God, that's a very different thing, right? It may not look different from the outside, but it is different. Busyness versus kind of at work for the kingdom.
Sort of works versus faith.
Mm-hmm. Right. And certainly in that vein, if we're trying to do these things to kind of earn God's favor, then there's a problem. Why do we do this sometimes?
Because we're human.
Because we're human. Because we like shiny things, right? The thing that's right in front of me.
Sometimes those things are easier to do than to follow Jesus.
The Israelites always, just constantly through their entire historical life, had a problem with not worshiping the living God, but worshiping these gods that were, idols that they could see, because it's a lot easier to follow things that you can see. It's a lot easier to do the things that are on your to-do list than to follow an invisible God. And sometimes we can focus on those things to the exception of following Jesus. Sometimes we can be very much busy at work doing the work of God. But it's maybe a continuum. Maybe we can slip into one or the other.
Do you think following Jesus and being led by Jesus are two different things?
Say that again.
Do you think following Jesus and being led by Jesus are two different things?
No.
I think it is to a certain extent.
Okay.
I think you can be so focused on trying to follow Jesus that you lose sight as to what Jesus wants you to do. You open yourself to His guiding and His leading and seeking to do His will, and allow Him to lead you through a day. It's better than focusing just trying to constantly think about Jesus rather than starting your day, opening yourself to His will and asking Him to lead you how He wants you to handle things through that day.
Yeah, and that's it's kind of getting to a distinction that we'll make in a little bit, where sometimes we'll follow kind of the idea of Jesus, as y'all brought up. We follow an idea rather than actually looking for Christ leading in our life, seeing where God is at work right here and right now. Where is Jesus leading me right now? Because we're not following a historical figure. We're following the living Lord, who has been made flesh and is active in our life, which we'll get to in a little bit. Let's go ahead and go on to the next part.
Jesus is with his followers in Caesarea Philippi. This place is full of altars and idols. It's a place full of chaos. People worshipping different things, but not worshipping the one true God. This place is a mess. It needs cleaning up. And Jesus says to his followers, "Who do you say I am?" And Peter responds, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." In this statement, Peter realizes that Jesus is the promised rescuer that the Jewish people are waiting for. He understands that Jesus is a fulfillment of the prophecies. He understands something of the true identity of Jesus. And as he makes his public confession, he gets it. There amongst the altars and the idols, amongst the hope and the hype of this town, Peter gets it. He knows who Jesus is. Well, kind of. He thinks he gets it.
Let me see if I can, I'll stop streaming next time and we'll see if that will help the playback. Sorry about that. So, makes reference to Matthew chapter 16, verses 13 through 20, which I'll read to you real quick. Now, when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do the people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, but others Elijah, and some still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter," which means rock, "and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." Then he sternly ordered the disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. So Andy suggests that Peter had not fully grasped the gravity of his confession about who Jesus is. Right? He makes this statement. He kind of says, "Oh yeah, you're the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Though we profess to be Christians, do you think there are times when we fail to comprehend who Jesus is? Really? Yeah. Sometimes.
I think we know he's the Messiah, but we don't always understand the full magnitude of his messiahship.
Mm-hmm.
He really is God himself.
Mm-hmm.
We see him as two distinct.
Right.
Well, to me, it's kind of hard to comprehend, what would you say? Something, well, all the...
Incomprehensible. Right.
Somebody, well, an entity or with so much power and authority, and we're way down here and he's way up there. So. Hard to get a handle on it sometimes.
Right. And in Jesus, God became flesh so we could understand who he is, but sometimes we, in our minds, go too far the other way. Oh, like he was just a human being, just like everybody else. But that's not all he is. So we don't always live in light of who Christ really, truly is. Partially because it doesn't quite fit in our brain. Right? It's too big. Do you follow Jesus, or do you sometimes expect him to follow you? Maybe you want to contemplate by yourself, but if you want to share, you can. fine distinction. What it brings up to my mind is the story of Joshua when he was getting ready to go. They actually just come into the Holy Land, and they were getting ready to take on the big walled city of Jericho. And he sees this man dressed in full armor, and he says, "Which side are you on? Are you on our side or are you on their side?" And he says, I'm the captain of the Lord's army. I'm on the Lord's side. Implication, if you want to be on my side, that's fine, but I don't pick sides. You can be on my side. That's up to you. But sometimes we have this idea that, oh, well, if I'm just doing this, so God obviously is on my side, which is not always the case. Why do we do that, do you think?
So we want to do it our way.
Absolutely we want to do it our way, right? And it's a lot easier to, as your distinction, right, to follow than to be led.
When we do it, we're trying to rationalize.
Oh,
our reasons.
absolutely.
That's why.
Rationalization. We are good at rationalization, aren't we? We're great at self-justification. And Peter, I think, I say this often, but Peter's the guy that talks first and thinks later. He blurts this out, and this is great. And I love Jesus' response, which we didn't read, but Jesus says, good job. You obviously did not get this from anything other than God, because I've met you before and you're not that bright. It's just, God had to have revealed that to you. And we do that. We speak Christianese sometimes. We know the right words to say, but do we really put it into action? But this story comes right before another story where Peter gets a glimpse of who Jesus really is. So let's watch